And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on leadership and development, discovering your leadership voice. I'm going to hand things over now to our featured presenter. He is executive leadership coach and professional development consultant, Mr. Brian Ackles. Brian, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And welcome to this interesting topic about leadership voice. Some of you may be wondering what this is actually all about and what discovering your leadership voice is. And that's what we're going to be talking about for the next 45, 50 minutes or so. So just a brief overview of what this is all about. As leaders in your organization, leaders are the voice of the enterprise. You're the voice of your teams. What you say, when you say it, and how you say it impacts all the people listening to your message. Those are three really, really important points about your leadership voice, and we'll talk more about these. So we're going to look at some of the key elements about what makes up your leadership voice and how these impact your organization, impact your teams, and impact your success, your team's success, and your organization's success. So let's jump into this. Your leadership voice is like it is an instrument. It's the instrument with which you inspire others. You lead change. You inspire others to fulfill the purpose of the organization. But your leadership voice also is your voice that you develop, that you use to inspire people both in work and outside of your work life as well. You're trying to affect others positively. And to do this, you need to be perceived as being credible. So the message and your actions, they've got to match up with who you actually are. If you try and deliver a message and the actions that are associated with this message and they don't match up with how people see you, then they're not going to believe what you're saying. It's a fundamental way that we're wired to listen and to interpret and to value how people communicate. So our values that we have as people and individuals, we've got to know what they are. So we must, first of all, be clear on what our own values are, and we have to act in accordance with those values. So the value would be, I'm passionate about making sure that my team members have the tools that they need, or that they have the support that they need from me to do their jobs well. It's not about me, it's about them. I truly believe that it's about the people that work in my team. My actions must support that. If the things that I do not show that I value or that I am supporting them so that they can be the best that they can be, people will not see me as credible. So my message and my actions and my words have to match all of that. In order to do this, you have to be authentic. And we'll talk more about authenticity in leadership as we go through this. You have to be real. That's what it comes down to. You can't fake this. You have to be who you are. And if you are authentic in your leadership, and if you're authentic in your communication, you're going to build trust, and you're going to build trust-based relationships. Trust-based relationships foster committed followers. The people will naturally want to follow you because they trust you. If you don't have the support of the people that you're leading, you will not be successful. You can set up all the strategies and develop them into goals, and you can do all of the right things to structure an organization. But if people don't trust you, and if you don't have this trust relationship with the people that you're leading, they're not going to follow you to do the things that need to get done. So authenticity in leadership is critical, absolutely critical. So this quote from Kevin Cashman on Leadership from the Inside Out: Of all the principles supporting sustainable leadership, authenticity may be the most important. It may also be the most challenging. Let's just think about that for a second. So it sounds on the surface to be pretty straightforward. I need to be authentic. I need to be, and I need to present who I am. So easy to say, but you also have to understand who you are. You have to be very self-critical. There's a lot around trying to define who you actually are and making sure that what you're saying and how you're doing things actually match the reality of who you actually are. So looking at authenticity, delving into this a little bit more. Authentic leaders value who they are, and they spend time and focus effort on knowing themselves. We get so absolutely caught up in our day-to-day work. I was on vacation last week, as an example, and I came back to the office yesterday morning, and I had an astronomical number of emails waiting for me, and I skim through them, and you learn how to triage, etc., to figure out what's important. But I spent all day just focusing on communications from other people without taking the time to also spend a little bit of time to reflect on how I was actually managing this and how this was affecting what I was planning on doing yesterday and for the coming week and the coming month and to the end of this quarter, to the end of the year. And it's important that we take the time regularly to focus on knowing who you are and knowing yourself and understanding how things are impacting you. Authentic leaders work to understand their own strengths and their own vulnerabilities. What are you good at? Where are your strengths? Knowing your own strengths is a real big positive. And it's not being boastful about it. It's knowing what you're good at. It's knowing where you can really have an impact on people. Conversely, though, you also have to know as to what makes you vulnerable, what doesn't work for you. Where do you have challenges on how you work, how you think, how you communicate? So authentic leaders are really, really focused on serving their team. And this is really important, serving their team, their organization, and their customers. They're your clients. You're not being self-serving. You're serving others. And it's the whole concept, really. It's called servant leadership, which we won't get into, but it's something you may want to look up and follow on. You are there to support other people. Authentic leaders do this. I won't say they do it naturally. They work on it, and this is part of what makes a leader authentic. Their own self-awareness is generated from the outside in. They get feedback from others, and also from themselves. You take some time to be introspective. Sit down, and if you've come out of a meeting and things haven't gone the way that you thought they should, take 10 minutes as soon as you can and just replay in your head what happened. Why didn't things go the way that you thought? Was it something that you said? Was it the way that you responded? Was it how you received information? Did you go in with preconceived ideas that weren't validated? There's all kinds of questions you can ask, but you also need to do this for yourself. You need to be introspective, and you need to be honest with yourself in those answers. So again, this is something which you need to continually work at. Ask for feedback from other people. Get people to critique your communication, critique how they view you. When I was speaking in this meeting, ask somebody that was in the meeting, say, when I was speaking in this meeting, how did you feel about how I presented this topic? Ask for their feedback. That will help you hone and help you craft your messaging. It'll help you understand how you're perceived by other people. It's also important to be open. It's a big positive to be emotionally honest with yourself. So I'll stop there for a second. You need to be emotionally honest with yourself first. The next part of this bullet is to be, and it's generally important, to be emotionally honest with those around you. Now, there is a time and a place. There are times when it's not healthy or it's not safe to be emotionally honest with those people around you. And that's a tough distinction. So you need to make conscious choices about what you disclose and how you feel and when you talk to people. Improving the quality of your relationship is really the key benefit that you're looking for when you're disclosing your feelings and your emotions and being open. So it's really not about just making sure that people understand how you feel and what your emotions are, but there's a purpose to it. The purpose is to improve relationships, improve the quality of your relationships. So if it's appropriate to let somebody know that you're feeling angry with what they just said, and if you can tell them in a way that will further improve the relationship going forward, that's great. If you're going to tell somebody you're angry with what they just said and it serves no purpose other than self-satisfaction for you, then why would you disclose that? All it's doing is, it's a cathartic effect, absolutely, but it's not actually helping you build the relationship. So again, you have to make these judgments in both ways. So why do you need your leadership voice? What do you get out of it? What does the organization get out of it? Like we started off right from the very beginning. Leaders, you're the voice of the organization. You're the voice of the enterprise. As leaders, we either contribute or we create, or we're part of the team that creates the strategic direction of the organization. Because of this, we also need to take a very strategic approach to our own development as leaders. No one is a great leader from the day they become a manager or a leader. They work at it. Really great leaders work at it all the time. They listen to what other people say and they adapt. You don't see big changes in people from day to day, but if you look at somebody that you consider to be a leader and you look at how they act and deal with situations today, and if you've known them for a long time, think back, years to see how they've developed over that time, and you will see a progressive improvement in their ability to lead. Through what we say and what we do, it's our message that we're trying to get across to others, right? We have to create and craft messages that grows the value of the team, that grows the value of the contribution of the individuals in the team. By growing that value within the organization, we're also increasing the ability of the organization to deliver on its promise, to deliver on its strategic goals and directions. So that's fundamentally why you need your leadership voice, is to inspire people, to help the organization succeed, to make sure that your team is succeeding, to make sure that the people that you are responsible for, that you are leading, that they are able to do things to the best of their abilities. So your leadership voice is made up of everything you have that you put into the messages that you deliver, right? So it's all of these pieces have to come together. So it's about knowing who you are, being authentic. So how do people perceive you? And what do they know about you? Like, do your people know who you are? Do they understand what drives you? What have others heard you say and seen you do? I mean, are you presenting in this, are you being perceived, are you presenting in the same way that other people see you? I mean, are you able to look in a mirror and say, okay, this is who I am? And if that mirror were other people, they would also agree with you. What is the content of your message? How are you delivering your message? How is your absolute pure skill in communicating with people? Are you good at speaking? Are you good at communicating? Do you have the ability to inspire people? Do people listen to you when you speak, or do they drift off and roll their eyes? So discovering your leadership voice and discovering your voice is, again, discovering who you are and what is your purpose as a leader. What purpose do you serve? Why are you a leader in this organization? What exactly is it that you're supposed to be doing as a leader in the organization? And if you take a few minutes, and take a few minutes today if you can, and actually try and write down the answer to that question. What is the purpose that you serve as a leader in your organization? How are you perceived by others? What competencies do you need to develop? And again, think back to taking a strategic approach to developing your leadership voice. Where do you need to improve? Can you improve on your communications? Can you improve on how people see you? Are your actions matching your values? Are they matching your words? Are you delivering clear messages? Understand where you can improve and try and find how to do that. And we'll talk more about this as we go through in the next few minutes. You need to be, as a leader, and again, you have to understand the purpose of your leader. So how do you create purposeful leadership? So it starts off, again, understanding why your role exists. So the organization has created a structure. And within that structure, they've created a role that you are in. And that role can have many different titles. You could be a supervisor, you could be a manager, you can be a director, a vice president, managing director, a group, group lead. There's a myriad of titles out there. But there's a reason for your role to exist. And that reason is you have to get something done with a group of people. I don't know what that is. It's up to you to define. Your team, your group of people that you are responsible for, has to do something. So you have to understand why you exist as a leader and what that something is. So you make a difference by serving in the most effective way you can. What is it that your team needs from you to be effective? So what do they need to grow and to develop? What information do they need? How do you move your team to be a truly high-performing team, focused on the future to deliver success? Now, that's all part of being a manager and part of being a leader. Now, how does your leadership voice support you in delivering that purpose which you've defined? Well, your leadership voice, again, comes back to your messaging. It comes back to being able to communicate what's being done, to communicate what has to be done. It matches your values. It matches what you truly believe in, and what you truly believe in is the success of the organization. So as long as you do truly believe that, and you believe in what your organization is doing, then that helps make you an authentic leader as well. So your leadership voice supports all of the aspects of being a manager and being a leader by matching the message, the content, your actions, your values to the purpose of the team, and the purpose as to why you actually exist as a leader and why your team exists. So one of the ways to help visualize this is start at the top and you create a vision. So think of I'll try and give you a concrete example here. Say, all right, let's say our vision is to be the #1 developer of household robots in Europe by 2023. That's an absurd vision. Maybe it's a great vision. Maybe you're already in an organization which has a vision similar to that. Okay, so that's our vision. We're going to build household robots, and we're going to be the leaders of this in Europe by 2023. So now we've got to come up with some goals. So how do we, what specific goals do we have to create to support that vision? So our goals, one of the goals might be to develop brand awareness by a certain date, to develop prototypes that we can get out into the market by a certain date. And we will set certain goals, and the goals will be time bound and specific and all that good stuff. And then to support those goals, you're going to have certain outcomes. Now, the outcomes really are, what do we have to do to support the goal? Who do we have to talk to? Who do we need to persuade? How do we need to get people to think, to feel? What do we need them to believe in to create and support these goals, which will ultimately support our vision? So you need to start identifying all of these pieces. So it's really building up a process of how you're actually going to create something. So who needs to be involved? Is it your entire organization? Is it parts of the organization? Do you need to get government involved? Who's affected by this? Your manufacturers, your supply chain, logistics, the society that you're working in, etc. Understand and identify all of these people. What do you need to know about all of these people that are involved or affected? What specific things do you need to know? What benefits do they bring to the table as well? And again, you're thinking about how you're going to be communicating with them. What is your voice? What are you trying to say to these people? What risks do these people pose to your vision, to your goals? What do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do, or what do you want them not to do? And how do you want to engage with them? Is this something which requires a personal touch? Is it something that you have to spend your time going out and speaking individually with people to gain their support for the goals, to support the vision? Is this something which is going to be more of a mass media message? Is it going to be done in meetings and forums and symposia? And how do you mitigate risks? So you've identified who needs to be involved. You've identified all of this. Now you're trying to craft a message, and you're trying to inspire people and lead them. And again, you need to use all the tools that you have at your fingertips. Using your leadership voice, you need to bring all of this together to engage and communicate with people, but you need to know your audience before you can actually do that. And that's really what this fundamentally comes down to, is you need to know your audience. How do they need to be communicated with? What do they need from me as a leader? So this comes in now to the art of persuasion. Aristotle, the father of persuasion, talks about ethos, pathos, and logos. The credibility, your ethics, the emotional appeal through pathos, and the logical argument through logos. Of all of these, we go right back again to being an authentic leader. And one of the fundamental parts of being an authentic leader is you must be credible. Your actions must match your words. If your actions don't match your words, then you are not credible. All of the emotional appeal, all of the logical arguments won't help you if you're not credible. If, however, you are credible, then you can still, you're dealing with the emotional side, you're dealing with the logical side, and you're building the pieces to help you persuade people to follow you. So this all becomes, again, part of the toolkit of developing your leadership voice. So again, you lead with credibility. You must be credible. You want to appeal to people's emotions, absolutely. To back your arguments up with logic, but doing those two things can never damage your credibility. You must be perceived as being ethical. You need to be trusted in your organization, and if you're trusted in your organization, you'll be influential in your organization. Never give up your ethics. If you give up your ethics, you will not succeed. And I'll state it as bluntly as that. As soon as you start compromising your ethics, then other people will see that. And other people will see you as lacking credibility. And your influence and trust in the organization will be damaged. And it's very hard to regain that. It's not impossible, but it is very hard to regain that, and it takes a lot of time. So don't put this on the line. Lead with your ethics, appeal to emotion, back it up with logic. The thing about leading and things about leadership is you're a leader everywhere, because it's not just being a leader from 9 to 5 when you're in the office. Leadership is a behavior. It's not a job. And it's not even an innate characteristic. Leadership is something you develop, and it's something which becomes part of you. You don't turn on being a leader when you walk out the door in the morning to go to work. You don't turn off being a leader when you come home. So how you build this within yourself, you need to recognize that you're always going to be a leader, no matter where you are. It's a state of mind, right? It's about taking an idea and taking action on that idea and moving it forward. Leaders bring about change. And as we all know, change is one of those things which people absolutely love until it happens to them. And then change becomes, oh, that's hard. I don't know. Why should we do this? Convince me. Why are we doing this? So when people start to have a challenge with change, being a leader, being a credible leader, someone that people want to follow, having a strong leadership voice, being able to, so people know that your actions and your words and your messaging all represent who you really are. They will trust you. You're appealing to their logic. You're appealing to their emotions. You're able to craft a message. You're able to deliver an argument which is credible and real as to why this change is beneficial for them, beneficial for the organization. And it's not about spinning things. Okay, I want to get that out. You're not putting a spin on something. You truly believe that a change is necessary and good. You have the data, you have the information to back up that belief. Not only do you have that information and the data, but you can communicate that information and communicate that data to people so that they truly believe and they are convinced by what you are trying to do. And they are convinced that what you are trying to do and what you are leading, what change you are leading, is to the benefit of themselves and to the benefit of the organization. You're focusing on this future, on the future desired state. Your focus is there. You already believe it, right? Because in order to be credible and real, you have to truly believe in this future desired state. So you believe it. So now you're using all the tools that you have at your fingertips, at your disposal, to engage people to follow you to get to that future desired state. You want to bring that vision to fruition. But you have to work at it, and you have to have all this information, and all this has to be at your fingertips. But you're always leading. You never miss an opportunity. Who might you run into over dinner some evening when you're out? You might run into a colleague, you might run into a potential customer, you might run into a supplier, and they might ask you a question about what you're doing. You're always going to be leading when you answer that question. It never stops. So you lead from anywhere. So there are some techniques to engage with other people. You create an emotional connection with people. Find out who they are, what they want, what they value. Link it to similar aspects of your own life, of your own person. Use simple and direct language. Don't flower it up. Just be as real and as honest as you can. Use figures of speech sparingly, and it's important that you recognize the cultural context of who you're speaking with as well. We are in a multinational global work environment. Not everybody understands a figure of speech as you may use it in your local environment. So there's a phrase in New Zealand, it's good as. So good as really doesn't have a lot of meaning outside of New Zealand. Good as means something is actually really quite great. That's good as, mate. So avoid using those things unless you're absolutely certain someone's going to understand you. Watch the use of words like and as. If you're going to use a metaphor to engage other people, make sure that the cultural context that you're using the metaphor in is appropriate and that it will be understood. And using analogies. And analogies, trying to describe things in different ways. Right? Find something that is similar. So all of these are techniques which you can use, and we won't go into this any much more deeper than this, to engage other people. Engage people through storytelling. We learn through stories. It's the way we learn from the time we're born. We tell stories to each other every single day. You'll be talking to somebody in the morning when you're having your coffee or over lunch, and they'll say, "Did you hear about?" Or "Did you read the story about?" "Did you know that?" And someone will tell you a story. It may be a story based on somebody else's story, but it's still a story. And they're engaging with you, and they're communicating with you in a way that if they're good at it, you're going to remember what they said. And it's not just about, they're not just telling you data and stats, right? They're telling you a story. And the good storytellers are engaging you, and they're powerful and they're passionate, and you're going to truly believe what they're saying. You might want to fact check it, by the way, at the end, but it's all about storytelling. We use stories to connect to people. By telling stories, we open up part of ourselves. And we talked about being, displaying your emotions and your feelings. Through storytelling, we actually do that. We open up about our feelings, we open up about our emotions, and we create that connection with other people. People learn not only from the words, but they learn from the picture that you're painting for them in their head. They're imagining what you're saying. They may not be experiencing it, but they're imagining what it would be like if they were in that situation. And it's a very powerful technique to engage with people. Storytelling is a very, very powerful way to get people to understand who you are and what you are very, very quickly. So let's go on and talk about communication styles. There's a reason for including this when you talk about your leadership voice, because there's an issue with around how people perceive others and how they communicate. when you see somebody and you make a judgment on how they communicate, and you say, oh, they're so hard to talk to, that's a very qualitative statement. Or they don't listen very well. Again, it's a qualitative, it's a good, bad type of statement. Another way of looking at this is looking at it a more quantitative way of how people communicate. And look at this through this matrix that we have on this slide about communication styles. Looking from expressiveness, low and high, and from assertiveness, from low to high, there's 4 basic communication styles: direct, spirited, systematic, and considerate. And if you think about these in terms of assertiveness and expressiveness, then you start to see why people may be communicating in one way or another. So we'll walk through these, and we'll walk through the strengths of each style, and we'll walk through some of the challenges for each style as well. So let's start off with, start off with considerate. We'll start off in the bottom right-hand corner for a change. So a considerate communicator listens well, is a good counselor, builds trust, supportive language. It's all about relationships, part of a team, very caring, very reliable, very steady. So if you remember, so considerate would be highly expressive, but fairly low assertiveness. So let's go to systematic. Still saying in that bottom quadrant, low assertiveness. Very precise, seeks information, speaks very efficiently, prefers an organized desktop. There's no mess, there's no fuss. Decisions are made on facts, very, very, very good at problem solving, very good and prefers very clear guidelines about how they do things and what they do, and they work very independently, very low assertiveness and very low expressiveness. That's a very systematic communicator. Now let's go back to the other side, the opposite of systematic, which you could almost say is spirited. Likes to be persuasive, focuses on the big picture, uses motivational speech, prefers to be around people, works very fast, builds alliances, generates a lot of enthusiasm, highly expressive, and highly assertive. And then you get to the direct. So highly assertive, but not highly expressive. Direct communicators get to the bottom line. They speak forcefully, they maintain eye contact, they present a very strong position. They like to be in control, and they like to be decisive. They thrive on competition, and they will take risks. So these are the strengths of the styles. And instead of classifying somebody as a good communicator or a bad communicator, good listener or a bad listener, think about your communication style and where you fit into this quadrant. And again, be honest with yourselves. And this is more of an introspective exercise. Where do you fit? So if you're a very spirited communicator and you're dealing with someone who's very systematic, that might not be easy for you to understand. Understand how all of these relate to each other. So let's look at the trouble spots that may come up for each style. So let's start with the spirited. The spirited communicator does not hear details. Tends to exaggerate a little, generalizes, can be overdramatic, responds poorly to criticism. Details, who needs them? Spirited communicators tend to miss deadlines. They're not really that important because it's not about time management. It's all about, you need to follow me. A considerate communicator avoids conflict. So if you're avoiding conflict, that means you'll probably give in pretty easily. You won't necessarily stand up for everything that you believe in. You'll keep your opinions to yourself. You might overemphasize your feelings. Likes to be comfortable. allows your own needs to sort of linger on in a conversation or linger on within a situation. Kind of resistant to change, and will generally, because they like to avoid conflict, will tell others what they want to hear. So not all good for considerate. Direct communicators, poor listeners, you get impatient because again, they're very, if you think about back to direct, right? Speaks forcefully, maintains eye contact, gets to the bottom line, but they like to argue. They like to compete. Don't care about feelings and not overly concerned with details as well. And direct communicators tend to be seen somewhat as workaholics because they're constantly driving to get stuff done. Now, systematic trouble spots can be a bit too much focus on details. So the dreaded paralysis by analysis. Not comfortable about personal disclosure. Not really interested in sharing their lives. Really speaks in a monotone. Really not a lot of change in their vocal tones. Very keen on accuracy, regardless of what it does to people's feelings. So it very can be seen as very impersonal as well. Delays decision making because they want to have all the details and they don't like risks. So again, think about communications and think about how you communicate and how others communicate. And think about how you can adapt to their style or understand where they're coming from. And again, using your leadership voice, understand how you can persuade them to be what you need to get done, what you need to get done. It's all about making an impact. You're demonstrating confidence in what you have as a leader. You're engaging people as a communicator, and you're getting people committed to the vision. And this is really important. This is all about, again, driving people forward, trying to find ways to engage with people so that they will follow. So being impactful is more than just words. We create impact by being confident. So a confident bearing tempered by a warm and approachable manner. You can be confident and aloof, and that's not going to help you that much. People need to be comfortable in approaching you. You recognize that you recognize emotion. You have a strong sense of emotion and of your own emotion, but you are able to manage your emotions. I won't say control necessarily, but you're able to leverage your emotions in the best way possible. Going back to what we talked about earlier, you know, what you're disclosing to people is all about building greater relationships. You have a strong ability to communicate, but you can also listen really well. And that means that when you're speaking and when you're talking with somebody and you're in a conversation with somebody, you will stop and you will listen to what they say and you will only focus on what they're saying. You won't be planning on what you're going to say next. You present a strong commitment to your followers. But you have the ability and you are recognized as the leader. This is the impact you have with your leadership voice. And you also, it's all about your commitment. It's a personal commitment you have to achieving the vision that you've created. So this whole process is all about reviewing and adjusting, and it's a process. It's iterative. It's not something which is linear. Every time you do something, look at what you've done, review, take some time to be introspective, and adjust what you're doing. Look at your voice, look at your vision, look at the outcomes you're trying to create. What is your message? What is your delivery? Review all of this, and this goes around and around and around. you never stop improving your ability to be a leader and develop your leadership voice. So it's not something you work on and there's an end goal. It's something you continue to develop and refine as you move through your life, as you move through your career. And it's about a campaign. That you're not just creating a one-off message. You're looking for different ways to communicate and contribute. So you're building support, different ways of creating a message, different ways of delivering information. You're building up a campaign to achieve something, which is this future desire state, which is this vision. So the conversation should build over time, and it should build on what your previous communication has been, and it should never contradict it. It's always building to something which is going to become greater. So it's this idea of campaign thinking. And finally, as my last words, you enhance your leadership effectiveness through your message. You communicate with greater openness and authenticity with a strong leadership voice. With a strong leadership voice, you craft compelling messages that connect people to purpose, which is what you're always trying to do. With a strong leadership voice, you engage, you motivate, and you inspire others to embrace change. And it's something we can all get better at. It's something we all continually learn throughout our careers as managers and throughout our careers as leaders. And with that, I will say thank you. Thank you very much for indulging me in this, and I hope to talk to you all again soon.
Thank you so much, Brian, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you guys have any questions, we will remain on the line for a few more minutes and we will get those answered. I also wanted to point you all to our website at newhorizons.com or your local New Horizons Center. And again, if you aren't familiar with your local New Horizons, you can visit newhorizons.com and do a zip code search to find your nearest center. And there you will find all of our information under our Center for Leadership and Development and all of our upcoming courses on topics such as the one that you just viewed today. So let's go ahead and get to those questions, Brian. When engaging with another leader who is not authentic, what are some tips you'd recommend to improve the communication?
So if you know somebody is not being authentic, simply ask questions. Lots of questions about what they believe, what they're trying to accomplish, and the more questions you ask, the more likely that someone is going to come up with what their basic truth is. So it's all really about diving in and not being afraid about asking questions.
All right, that's a great response. And the next one is, when would you say it's not healthy or safe to be honest?
Ooh, see, I knew that question was going to come up. So if you're, and it's really about honesty in your emotions and feelings, so I'll assume that's what the question is about. When it will damage a relationship with somebody, it might be a good time to sort of hold back on what you're feeling about what somebody has said or what a situation has presented. If you feel that it's going to damage the relationship, you might want to take a step back and wait and think about maybe a different way of addressing the situation which has caused you to have those feelings and cause those emotions to come up in you. So it really is a time to stop and wait rather than damage a relationship which may not need to be damaged and which really you should be trying to build for the future.
All right, and we did receive a few questions asking about the recording link as well as the slide deck from today. So just want to address that I will be sending everyone the PowerPoint presentation as well as the slide deck for you to review anything you may have missed. You can review it at any time or pass it on to any colleagues or friends who weren't able to join us. All right, Brian, next question we have is, as a leader, how do you act in a critical situation?
Well, and this really is the crunch time. So that's really where you start to show your true colors as a leader. So as we get into crunch time, we get into crisis situations, the pressure is on. The more authentic you are, and the more real that you are, and the more your ability to understand your emotions and understand your own feelings, your actions really won't change that much when you're in a critical situation or when you're in a normal day-to-day situation. I know personally how I act, and personally I get a bit more focused, I get a bit more intense in situations which are more critical, and I'm quite aware of that, and I try and work around that and try and take a step back to be more the type of person that I want to be in normal situations, in a crisis situation as well. You try and maintain your leadership style and your leadership voice throughout any situation, and that for me anyways is my goal, that I'm trying to work towards.
All right. And is there a good practice to being authentic when most people on the team, on your team, seem to not be?
Well, I think it's if they're on your team, you can certainly start to influence them to be authentic, and that's again, uh, you start with yourself, of course. As long as you're presenting yourself as real and presenting yourself as authentic, and you start engaging people in conversation, you start engaging them by asking them questions, getting to know them better, getting to find out who they actually and really are, and that's depending on the type of person they are, they may not want to open up about themselves. So it'll take some time. It'll take some gentle persuasion, some gentle conversation, gentle questioning, and it's really about getting to know who they are, and then you can almost start to persuade them to be more authentic.
Okay. And then it looks like this will be our last question. As an HR professional, how would you effectively manage upward when providing feedback to your leader?
Ooh, that's a good question. So um, I've been very fortunate, that I've had people that I can always talk to, and one of the things that I've used with my managers and my bosses over the years is during performance reviews, I always try and set the stage so that I will ask them um, how they feel about my performance, and I will try and get them to ask me the same question. So how do I feel about their performance? And within your performance management programs, as an HR professional, if you have the ability to modify uh, performance management discussions and topics, and one of the questions that can be added into any performance discussion is that, so that 180-degree feedback to say, okay, so what do I need from you? And I encourage my staff to ask me that question. Um, so if I'm encouraging my staff, then I'm also trying to encourage my manager to ask me that question as well. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But if you can influence how the performance management program is set up, then that can be a way to address it.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. And thank you for everyone for joining us today, and especially for those who asked those questions. It was a great follow-up to today's session. And we really appreciate everyone's feedback and being so attentive and asking questions. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Brian, it's always great to have you join us and speak on behalf of New Horizons.
My absolute pleasure.
All right, that will conclude today's session, everyone. Thanks again. Hopefully you'll join us for future webinars. We already have our leadership and development webinars scheduled for November and December. So take a look on our website under webinars, and you can register for those upcoming sessions. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great day.